Do you feel disconnected from the people or places around you? Like your old life is just completely disappearing right in front of your eyes? If so, you may be experiencing a spiritual awakening, and in this video, I'm going to share with you why we disconnect from our old realities during an awakening, and what you can do to feel less lost and lonely while you're going through this process. Stick around. Hello, beautiful soul. This is Christina Lopes, the Heart Alchemist, here to help you open your heart, heal from the past, and live with purpose. In this video, we're going to be talking about one of the most common signs of spiritual awakening, and that is disconnecting from people and places and the loneliness that comes with that. In the first part of the video, we're going to go behind the scenes and take a look at what disconnection is and why we even experience it during an awakening. And then in the second part of the video, I'm going to give you some valuable tips that will help you remain centered and at peace even when you do feel disconnected and lonely. Let's get to it. So what is disconnection and why do we experience it in the first place? There are a lot of blog posts and videos out there talking about spiritual awakening, and usually what you'll find is that they talk about one of the signs of spiritual awakening as being connection, meaning that as we spiritually awaken, we start to feel connected to all things and we begin to experience the oneness of life. And that is true. You do experience a sense of connection as you spiritually awaken. But what's not talked about as much is disconnection, and that also happens during a spiritual awakening. So if you think that you're reading these blog posts and looking at watching all of these videos at other spiritual teachers and thinking, what are they talking about? I don't feel connected. I feel disconnected. I feel completely lost. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. You're just going through another very common phenomenon during a spiritual awakening, and that's disconnection, okay? It's just as common as connection, okay? It's just not talked about as much. So what is disconnection? In order to understand what disconnection is, we need to take a step back and look at reality from an energy perspective, okay? So think of your reality from an energy perspective, not from a 3D perspective, not from a perspective of matter, the things that you can see and touch and feel, okay? We're gonna take a look back into the energy reality of life, all right? So if you think of your reality, everything that's in your reality, from your partner to your house, your job, your career, your car, the city you live in, the home you live in, the country you live in, if you begin to look at everything that surrounds you sort of as a network, an energy network that you're plugged into, okay? So you are plugged into the energy matrix or network that constitutes your reality, all right? This is how the world of energy operates. It's very simple in this way. The world of energy, this universe, is an attraction-based universe, meaning that I co-create my reality through the power of my consciousness and through the power of my energy. Everything that comes into my reality must be in energetic alignment with me, otherwise it wouldn't materialize in my life, okay? So that's simply how the world of energy works. Anything that is part of your reality, you can think of it as being in resonance with you energetically, all right? So, what does disconnection mean then? Disconnection means that the reality that you were plugged into before, you suddenly unplug from. That's what disconnection is. Disconnection literally means that I was plugged into a reality before and I have suddenly unplugged from it, and now I'm in sort of this no man's land, okay? So that's what disconnection essentially means. It means that you are no longer connected to the energy network or energy grid that you were connected to before. Now, I'll give you an example of how this looks in the outer reality, how this looks in real life. I'll give you an example of what disconnection looks like in real life by using my own experience. So I had my spiritual awakening in 2013, and it was triggered by the complete collapse of my marriage, all right? At the time, I don't know if you know much about me, but I was born in the US and then I was raised in Portugal, and when I was 17, I returned to the US to go to college, and I remained there for many years. I considered the US my home. I didn't imagine living anywhere else at that moment. But in 2013, when I had the collapse of my marriage and it triggered a spiritual awakening in me, suddenly I disconnected from the energy grid that I had been connected to. It was very quick. And from one moment to the next, first, I didn't want to be in my home, so I moved out. Then I didn't want to be in DC, so I flew out to California, thinking that it was maybe just because of DC. I flew out to California. And then when I got to California, I noticed that I didn't want to live in the US anymore, so I moved back to Portugal. Now, mind you, all of this happened within 2 to 3 months after my spiritual awakening. So imagine how jarring and how stressful this was for me at the time, because how is it possible that from one day to the next, I don't want to live in the country that I've lived in for years and that I considered my home before? So you see, my entire reality disappeared. My home, my marriage, my car, everything disappeared. The city that I lived in, everything disappeared, and suddenly I found myself living in Portugal. Okay, so here's an extreme example, because this happened very quickly in my life. But here's an extreme example of what disconnection means and how it materializes in your life. When you disconnect from your reality, one of two things will happen. Okay? One of the possibilities is that when you disconnect from your reality, some people and things that were in your reality can also change their energy, meet you where you are, and they stay in your life because they remain in energetic alignment. And we see this all the time with couples, for example, where one person goes through a spiritual awakening and then the other one starts their spiritual awakening too. And although they're both evolving, they're evolving together, so they stay in energetic alignment. The relationship doesn't fall apart. But it also can happen, one of the possibilities that can happen during a disconnection process is that you disconnect, your energy is now different, and the people around you, none of them, or maybe just 1 or 2 of them follow you. The other people don't follow. And so what happens is, if you are no longer in energetic alignment, then that part of reality will fall. Meaning that whoever doesn't follow you, whoever doesn't accompany you energetically when you're going through a spiritual awakening and you disconnect from the old grid, the people or places that don't accompany you energetically will drop out of your reality. Okay, so that's one of 2 things that happens. All right, now to some common characteristics, 5 common characteristics of what it means to be disconnected, the process of disconnection, to help you identify it better. The first one is that it's very rapid. So spiritual changes, especially the process of disconnection, they happen in, no time at all. This is a quantum process. So no time at all. It suddenly feels like you were one person a minute before and now you're completely different. So whenever you're experiencing the process of disconnection, it'll happen very, very quickly. And a lot of people tell me, gosh, like I went to bed one person and I woke up another. I've heard this so many times, and this happened in my own life. And that's because the process of disconnection is a spiritual process that occurs very quickly. It quite simply is a shift in your energy that occurs on the quantum level outside of time-space reality, meaning that it happens now. All right, so that's one of the characteristics. The second characteristic is that it is temporary, all right? And this is really important, and I really want you to listen to this part. This is temporary, because I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of people reaching out to me where they feel completely disconnected from their reality, and they go into a state of depression and sadness and extreme loneliness because they think, their minds think that it's going to be like this forever. It's not. This disconnection process is temporary. You got to work with it, okay? And why is it temporary? Because essentially, we really are connected. We are beings of connection. Again, we are beings that make our reality based on attraction, meaning that if I unplug from one network, I will have to plug into another one because I'm constantly attracting new things and new realities. So the process of disconnection is temporary because I will disconnect from my old grid or my old reality as my energy is changing. And I'll stay temporarily in this no man's land, but it is temporary because sooner or later, I'm going to plug into a new network. New souls are going to come into my life. New opportunities, new jobs, new homes, whatever it is that happens, new things are going to materialize. Okay, so remember this. If you feel disconnected right now from places, from people, don't stress. Okay, don't stress. This is all temporary, all right? Another characteristic that I often struggle with clients is that the disconnection process is irreversible, okay? Meaning, once your energy disconnects from your old reality, whatever that is, people, places, it doesn't matter. When you disconnect from your old reality, you cannot reconnect back to it. It's irreversible, the process, okay? And I really stress this a lot with clients because a lot of times, and this happened in my own life too, when my marriage fell apart, right when it was falling apart, I resisted it. I was like, no way, I'm not letting this marriage disintegrate. We're going to counseling. And so I ended up taking my ex-wife to counseling, and we were in counseling, I don't know how many sessions, because I was fighting the process of disconnection. But the counseling didn't help because I had already disconnected from the relationship, okay? So it was just my ego that was fighting the changes, all right? You cannot plug yourself back in to the old grid. You got to go with the flow, okay? So if you're struggling with this right now, if your ego is just saying, no, 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 I don't want to unplug, the ego is going to say that because the ego is a survival mechanism. It's here to keep you safe. It doesn't like change. So it's going to want to instinctively plug back into the old because in the old, at least you were safe. Everything was normal. Everything was going okay. The day-to-day was going okay. So the ego is going to want things as they were. But it's impossible for you to go back there, okay? So don't even try. Don't try because you're only going to be fighting against the energy and slowing the process down, okay? So you cannot plug back into the old reality. What you can do is just remain calm and centered, knowing that the new reality, the new network is going to be coming up for you to plug into now. The process of disconnection, that's another characteristic, is that the process of disconnection happens multiple times during a spiritual awakening. It actually happens multiple times throughout our lives. Even before you have a spiritual awakening, you're going through the process of disconnection every once in a while. So you may have a friend way back when, and then suddenly from one day to the next, you're like, oh, I don't really get along with my friend anymore, and you just terminate that friendship. Or maybe you change homes, or maybe you change careers. So before a spiritual awakening, we go through processes of disconnection, but it's just that before a spiritual awakening, the instances of disconnection are slower and they occur less frequently. When you go through a spiritual awakening, though, part of the reason why you're having a spiritual awakening is that it accelerates your energy, it accelerates your evolution. So during the process of spiritual awakening, while you're awakening, these disconnection moments are going to occur more and more dramatically, like it happened in my own life. From one day to the next, I didn't have wife, house, car, nothing. Just everything disappeared from my life, okay? So that is something that we all need to get used to. Because sometimes I'll have people say to me, all right, I disconnected from my old reality and now I have a new reality and I just want to stay here. Please don't let this one disappear. So people will get very stressed about it. But I just say, breathe. Take a deep breath. Everything is okay. Disconnection is going to happen multiple times throughout your life, especially when you're going through a spiritual awakening, and it's okay, because here's the fifth characteristic of disconnection, and that is that it's a process that occurs for your benefit, not to hurt you, okay? So when you disconnect, it's your soul part of you, the energy part of you that's saying, we're done here, now it's time to go to somewhere else that's better for us, somewhere else that's more aligned with our evolution. It's time to go somewhere else where we could be more joyful, where we can live a life with more purpose, you see? So whenever this process of disconnection happens in your life, it's always happening for your benefit, okay? Not to hurt you. The best analogy that that I can give of the disconnection process is the caterpillar going into a cocoon. All right, so when a caterpillar isn't afraid of going into the cocoon, right? So imagine if there were caterpillars all over the world that from one day to the next decided, no way, I'm not going into that cocoon. I want to stay a caterpillar. You see? So we wouldn't have any butterflies in the world, all right? So the caterpillar doesn't resist going into the cocoon because she knows that if she's still and at peace, eventually she's going to emerge with wings and she's going to be a butterfly. So the process of disconnection is really that image of being in a cocoon. You know that eventually you're going to break free and you're going to have wings and you're going to be a butterfly. But at the moment that you're going through the disconnection, just be at peace being in the cocoon, and that's okay. All right? Now to the second part of the video, and that is tips and advice to help you remain at peace and centered when going through this process of disconnection. If you feel completely disconnected from life right now and from the people around you, these tips are going to help you. So the first tip is know what's happening. Be aware of what's happening. Gosh, what I would have given to have a video like this back in 2013 when I was awakening, because at that moment, I literally felt like the rug of life was pulled from me. I mean, I lost so many things disappeared from my reality at the same time that it was really frightening at times. So, but when you are aware of what's happening, when you are aware, since you're watching this video, now you know that if you feel disconnected from others, this is a temporary process. You know exactly what's happening because I've explained this all in the video. So when you're aware of what's happening, then that makes the process become easier and lighter because you know that it's temporary, you know that it's here for your benefit, you know that when you unplug from one network, you will eventually plug into another. So doesn't this feel good to know when you're aware that there's a purpose to this process, that there's a purpose to what you're going through? So that's the first tip, is just being aware and knowing what's happening, understanding what's happening on an energy level, and understanding that the process of disconnection is necessary and it's for your good. The second tip is ground yourself. Okay, in any way that you possibly can. When we unplug energetically, it can be frightening, and it was to me, and it is to so many people that reach out to me. It can be really frightening when from one moment to the next, remember, the disconnection process energetically is quantum. It occurs now. It takes no time at all for you to change energetically. Now, the repercussions of those energy changes in your outer environment, in your life, it can take time. For instance, in my own example, my marriage disintegrated in an instant, and my spiritual awakening happened in an instant, but then it took weeks and a few months for the whole thing to actually take its course and for me to get divorced and move on, right? So even though the energy shift, even though the disconnection occurred in a quantum moment, it can take time for that energy to ripple out and completely change your reality. Sometimes it's fast, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But while you're in this limbo, in the in-between worlds, while you're in this cocoon, transforming yourself into a butterfly, it can feel a bit stressful. It can feel like you're lost. Some people say that they feel like life is surreal. They don't know left from right, up from down. They feel completely lost. They feel lonely, okay? And that's normal to feel, right? Because we're energetic beings. Even if we're not spiritual, we're still energetic beings. And when we're plugged into one reality, at least that gives us some security, right? But when we unplug from that reality, now it's like we're floating. We have no idea what's happening, and that could be frightening. So this tip to ground yourself is super important because it will help you stay calm. It will help your ego quiet down because, again, the ego is the mechanism of survival. It will constantly be trying to fix things for you, even though there's nothing wrong with this process, okay? So your ego may be coming up with a million reasons why something's wrong in your life. It could either be saying, go back to your boyfriend, or what are you doing? You can't leave your job. So your ego will constantly be saying things, and it's really important to remain grounded as you're going through this disconnection phase, all right? Now, what does it mean to be grounded? Being grounded to me means being in your physical body. You do not try to escape your physical body. So you're not sitting on the couch imagining what life's going to be like later on. Less imagining exercises and more mindfulness in your body exercises. Your physical body is a very grounding force to you, okay? So anything that you can do that can put you in your body is a grounding exercise. So it could be dancing. I love to dance as a grounding exercise. It could be walking in nature, especially by trees. Trees have a beautiful grounding energy. So if you can go hiking in the forest, or if you can go sit by a tree every single day, do it, okay? It could be salt baths. It could be meditation, but not envisioning meditations that are more body focused. So just a simple mindfulness meditation, like sitting and focusing on your breath, okay? That's a grounding exercise. And there are many more, but you get what I'm saying. Try as much as you can to simplify your life at that moment and ground yourself as much as possible. Taking your shoes off and your socks off and walking around the earth barefoot. That's another great grounding exercise, and the list goes on and on. But you get what I'm saying. Ground yourself as much as possible during this process. It will really help, and it'll accelerate the disconnection process. The third tip is connect to your spiritual guidance. Okay? Ask your angels for support. Ask your guides for support. We are so loved, and we have a team of spiritual beings that are always accompanying us, even if we don't feel it, okay? So if you're new to spiritual awakening and you still can't feel, or your intuition isn't working very well yet, it doesn't matter, okay? You're still guided even if you can't communicate with your guides, all right? You're still guided and you're still loved, and your guides are always there waiting for you to ask them for help, okay? Remember, our free will cannot be violated. So you can have a bunch of angels or guides or spirits around you wanting to help you. They will not intervene unless you give authorization for them to intervene, okay? This is a universe of free will, all right? This is a reality of free will. So be very proactive about asking for guidance. Even if you can't channel it, or even if you can't feel it immediately, your guides will know how to communicate with you in the best way that you can receive it. It could be through a synchronicity. It could be through a conversation that you have with someone that was actually answering something that you had asked your spirit guides. It could be a bunch of different things. The important thing, though, is to give authorization, constantly ask for help from your guides, and this will help bring in more and more energy to help you go through this disconnection process while you're feeling like you're in no man's land and your old reality has fallen to the side, all right? Always ask for help. And the fifth and last tip is, I left this tip for last because this is the one I want you to focus on the most, okay? And that is, do not fight the disconnection process, okay? I struggle the most with my coaching clients in this, and I struggled the most in my own awakening, because disconnection can be really frightening, okay? It could be really frightening. It could activate the ego. The ego is there for survival. So the first thing the ego is going to do is, no, 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 we're going to go plug right back into the reality we had before because we were perfectly happy. We're not changing anything. So your mind is going to be pushing for you to plug back into the old, for you to be okay with the way that you were before, all right? And this will slow down your disconnection process, okay? You can accelerate it. You can make it faster, meaning that you can just be in that no man's land between one world and the next. You can be in that no man's land for less time if you don't resist the process, okay? Now, what does resistance look like? And this is what I work with clients a lot on, is when you disconnect from your old reality, okay? Again, your ego is going to want to connect back. That's normal. But people also feel very lonely, and when they start to feel lonely, when they start to feel disconnected from the environment and from people around them, because we're such social creatures and because we have this tendency to want to belong and to connect with others, that's natural in us, when we are in this process, when we're in this limbo land of disconnection, it could cause emotions like sadness, loneliness, depression. So we can, if we go with that energy, it'll spiral downward and we'll begin to feel more and more depressed, more and more sad. And what that'll do is it'll pull down on your energy. So when you went through the spiritual awakening, your energy awoke, you went up in energy, and then suddenly if you start having depression, sadness, rage, all of these things, resisting change, you're starting to pull your energy down, and this slows down the process of disconnection, meaning that it actually keeps you in disconnection and in no man's land longer than necessary, okay? So please do not resist disconnection. Again, remember what I talked about before. You cannot plug in. It's inevitable. You can't plug in. It's irreversible. You can't go back. So if you can't go back, let's not look back anymore. Let's look forward, okay? And let's look forward with lightness and with just feeling positive, all right? This doesn't mean that you can't feel sadness and that you shouldn't feel lonely, and that if you're feeling these things, you're doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. But just remember, when you're feeling sadness, when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling like life doesn't love you, please remember, say this to yourself: I'm just going through a process of disconnection, and sooner or later I'm going to connect to a new network, and I'm going to call new souls and new opportunities, new jobs, new homes, whatever. The sky is the limit, all right? And I'm going to get there. Right now I'm in a cocoon phase. Right now I'm a little bit in no man's land, but it's okay. I will not fight this process, because this process is for my benefit. And when I come out of this process, I'm going to be a whole new person. I'm going to be more joyful. I'm going to be filled with purpose, and I'm going to have around me the people and the things that are in alignment with my new energy, okay? You don't want to be in alignment with your old energy, because your old energy was lower, right? Your newer energy is higher. That's the energy you want to be in alignment with, okay? And you want to call souls to you that have the same energy as you. You want to call opportunities and experiences that have the same energy as you, as the new you, okay? So don't resist the process. All right, beautiful soul, that's it for this video. If you liked this video, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button so you're notified as soon as a new video comes out. And if you want exclusive tools and resources that I only share with my private community, head over to my website at Christina-Lopes.com and sign up for my email list. I don't just publish videos, I publish in video, audio, and written format. And when you're on my email list, you don't miss a thing. But now it's your turn. What part of the disconnection process has been hardest in your own life? Let me know in the comments below. And never forget this: you're doing so well, and life is good, even when you can't feel it sometimes. All right, I love you, beautiful soul. Stick around for the next video. If you liked this video, consider subscribing. In the second part of, in the second part of the video, let's try this again. Take 4.